Welcome to the Light Cellar Podcast, brought to you by Light Cellar, a place where you can learn to find and craft your own food and medicine. In this interview series, you will meet a range of characters in the health and wellness space that are bringing light to your everyday. You'll hear from a number of different experts on a wide variety of topics. We have several different series within the podcast, including our Wild Wisdom and Storytelling with Blaine Andrusic, the Rays of Light, inspiring wellness in the community, plus solo casts, Q&As, and other topics for you to enjoy. You can find this as a video version, as well as the audio on any of your favorite platforms. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this with somebody you know who will benefit. You can also shop online at lightcellar.ca. All right, hello. Welcome to another podcast. I have my guest, Brittany Zeer of Blissful Womb Care.
Hello, so happy to be here.
Yeah, you might recognize Brittany if you've been to the shop and engaged with her on the floor. We've also had a couple of conversations in past on this platform. And I want to share Brittany's views, get her talking about this idea that focusing on the mother is the best path forward for society, for ourselves, for our communities. That's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, awesome.
Cool. So this idea, of course, we all come from a mother, right? Mm-hmm. Many women are mothers. They really are kind of the core of the community, the future. And yet, unfortunately, I don't think we go far enough to really support, appreciate our mothers. And we have Mother's Day. But that,
it's just one day. It's brunch or, some chocolate or some flowers. Like, is that really enough to really honor mothers?
Yeah.
For their roles?
For sure. So, it's one of those things when we look at society, when we look at, our communities, how can we fix them? How can we improve them? I love the angle, the path that you're on, which is to kind of focus on the mothers. So how does that translate to kind of, personal, community, and planetary healing?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we look, like Malcolm said, we all come from a mother and we all know mothers. And it has just become this inherent understanding or acceptance of mothers without really deep acknowledgement around what not only they go through on a physiological level through pregnancy and birth and postpartum, but also on like a mental, emotional, and spiritual level as well. And I studied with Rochelle Garcia-Saliga of Innate Traditions, and her whole platform is around midwifing a cultural shift where we center and honor mothers as the foundation of community. And when we can look at how mothers are the center of the family unit, and if we honor and support and tend to them appropriately, then that lays the foundation for the children to be thriving, for the entire family system to be thriving, and for that to ripple out into the community as well. And so we can also look back through history, especially the last 3 to 4 generations, and see how we have become farther and farther removed from the mother, from honoring and tending to her, especially during her postpartum time, the early postpartum time, but postpartum really is for life. So the entirety continuum, once a woman is a mother, she will never not be a mother ever again. And so my whole vision is to really start to shift the narrative around how we honor and tend to mothers, so that we can reclaim this, we can reclaim postpartum care, we can reclaim mother-centered care as the foundation for the pathway forward to healing and thriving life, not just for this generation, but for all generations to come. And it's a really big and arduous task, and there's a lot of different components around all of that, but it's something that I'm really passionate and lit up about.
Cool. Well, thank you for taking that on and being that person to help instigate the change. I love that, focusing on mothers. I mean, it's got to be one of the most underappreciated, hardest jobs, as you mentioned, not only physiologically, what her mother goes through, and how, ill-prepared. Yes, it's in our biology, and women that do become mothers and through that kind of passage and initiation, they do it, they survive it, but that's not the point.
That's not the point. We don't want to just be surviving anymore. We've just been surviving for so long, right? And so it like taking it a little bit deeper, and when we can look through all postpartum care traditions, all cultures around the world really had rites of passages, ceremonies where they honored this transition, this recognition, this acknowledgement that you have just gone through a massive transformation internally and externally, and who you once were is no longer, but you're learning how and who to be going forward. And so motherhood really shapes and shifts you in so many ways. And so we're lacking that. We're lacking that holding and containment within our culture and within our overall community as well. It's just, we spend all of this time and energy on focusing on fertility and preconception and then pregnancy, right? A woman will go to a doctor a ridiculous amount of times throughout her entire pregnancy. And then once she has her baby, the baby gets checkups frequently, but she only gets seen once at the end of her 6 weeks. Yeah. And then she's just left to fend and tend for herself. And without any of this support around what she just went through, again, like I said, physiologically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as well. And so when a woman isn't held and supported in that way, then she can feel lost and she can feel alone and she can feel really isolated. And so my whole vision is to rally community around that as the container.
Right. Yeah. Cool. And obviously, there's certain changes that can be made, more easily than others, and integrated as well. Like I think if we all kind of imagine, okay, maybe how children and mothers came together to kind of raise and be raised more communally, there was more support, and definitely our modern society with the kind of the nuclear family and even that changing and breaking apart, that I think is tough enough as like just kind of an isolated family unit. That might be challenging to kind of reverse that, so quickly. So what other kinds of ways and support can people get in that regard? And then we can also talk about kind of the physiological, nourishment piece, which I think with the information is a lot easier to implement than, child raising and that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the innate postpartum care foundation is rooted in the 5 essentials of postpartum care. So we can look to cultures from around the world, and many are still intact, like in Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine. But the foundations of all cultures around the world and how they tended to mothers was rooted in these 5 essentials, which is rest, warmth, body care, nourishment, and community support. And so those first 4 are the pillars. Rest, warmth, body care, and nourishment are the pillars, but they're very challenging to do without the foundation of community support. So we're in this conundrum, like you just said, where the families have been split apart. We're in this nuclear family. There's less and less of this family holding and tending to as well. So it can seem like a really arduous task, and it is, to implement all of these other things without that foundation of community support. Now, there are there's many different small and subtle ways that you can tend to yourself. And we'll talk a little bit about all of that as well, and the physiological design in that. And that's part of what we'll be going into in the Essentials of Nourishing and Supporting Mothers class. But thinking about nourishment, really, I find nourishment to be one of the things that people relate to and understand the most. Sharing a meal, creating a meal, using that, I really view food as medicine. And so I find that to be one of the most accessible ways that we can really start to repair a lot of these intergenerational deficiencies that many of us in this modern time are experiencing due to this lack of tending that our mothers and grandmothers received, and start to repair this not only for ourselves in this time, but for the babies and children that are coming in, and to lay that foundation going forward as well. So one of the things that I'm most passionate about the 5 essentials is the nourishment piece, because I do find it to be one of the most accessible and versatile things. Right. Because there's so many different ingredients and forms of nourishing yourself that can be a lot more accessible than some of the other things.
Yeah. I remember years ago I came across, and this is just theoretical, but kind of like the ideal spacing of children between, and maybe this is kind of the question, maybe different cultures have different interpretations of that. Obviously it can be done in shorter amount of time, there are longer periods, but what do you know about that in terms of, child spacing in particular to replenish the mother, which has just created another being, literally pulling from her own body to create this other being that's, high in fats and, a lot of critical nutrients that are are involved. Culturally, is there kind of an ideal time or window for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of different culturally. What I've heard is like 2 to 7 years, like a minimum of 2 years.
Right.
I think in indigenous cultures on our land here, they say like a minimum of 3 years.
Right.
And then it kind of differentiates between based on where you're at. I mean, it's not necessarily accessible to people, but that's one of the pieces that people don't understand as well is like how much the body is depleted through the experience of growing and birthing and then nourishing a human.
Yeah.
So even breast milk is created from the same substrate as blood, and
Right.
so producing breast milk is equivalent to a consistent loss of blood,
Right.
as well. And waters like how the female body will change and adapt and create breast milk based on what the needs of that baby are. And if the mother isn't being adequately nourished with these high fats and minerals and proteins and really replenishing what has been drawn from her body to create this little living being, then not only is she going to be depleted and possibly develop some sort of autoimmune disease or mental health disorder or long-term health problems if she's not adequately replenishing herself, but then also the baby and the child is lacking the appropriate nutrients to really lay this foundation for a fulfilling, healthy, long-term life as well.
Yeah. Cool. So you do have a workshop coming up, Essentials of Nourishing Mothers. So those kind of 5 pillars that you're going to be going through. Yeah. Share a little bit about more that coming up, specifics and details, and let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. So this class is, if you attended my workshop in September at the open house, this is going to be an expansion of what that was. In that previous class, I briefly touched on those 5 essentials and then pulled some products off the shelves here in the stores of here are some tangible ways that you can start to nourish and support yourself wherever you're currently at in your journey. And so I'm still going to be including in and incorporating that, but getting a little bit more into the physiology of what transforms in a woman's body through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. But my vision for this class isn't to just be a space for mothers to come and learn how to support themselves. Like we started this conversation off with, we all come from a mother and we all know a mother. And so in order to repair this massive arduous task of how do we start to center and heal mothers to create thriving life for future generations to come, really comes from the women and the partners who are supporting mothers being educated in how to appropriately support the mothers in their community. So although this is labeled Essentials of Nourishing and Supporting Mothers, this is a class for everyone. And I find it really important for partners and those, mothers, mothers of mothers and aunties and friends and all of that to come in so that we can really rally around and support the mother in your community. But also if you one day choose to become a mother, or if there's other mothers that you come around, how can you drop in just a little bit of support, whether it is through nourishment, like what is appropriate to feed a mother in her early postpartum time? Or if some symptoms start to arise later on, can we look at the physiology and where there might be lack in that so that we can rally around and pour a little bit more of that in too. And so it is community healing. It's a community space for us all to come together to learn and to reclaim and understand what is really essential to support the mothers in our community.
Yeah, awesome. So guys, if you're watching, get in the know, right? Yeah. Again, it could be your sister, it could be your niece, your aunt, whoever it is that is embarking on this path. And to be there in full support. So it's going to be Sunday, January 28th. There'll be online if you want. You can tune in from anywhere, or you can come in person. Regardless, you'll get the recording afterwards and kind of supporting material. Time on that, when does that start?
It's from 2 to 4.
2 to 4, yeah.
2 to 4.
That's Mountain Standard Time.
Yep, and if you will be joining in person, I'll be passing around samples of a nourishing bone broth that I make and a nourishing tea as well, just to show a few really tangible ways that you can incorporate some warmth and some nourishment into your body and taste it as well. That being healthy and nourishing can also be delicious as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, right on. Well, if you want to connect with Brittany, go to Instagram, Blissful Womb Care, and then also your website.
Yeah, blissfulwombcare.com.
All right, excellent. Well, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope that you'll join us for the class on the 28th as well. All right, give it a like, thumbs up, and share it around. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a like, share this with someone you know who would benefit, and subscribe so you're up to date with all the new episodes coming out. You can shop online at lightseller.ca as well as visit us in the heart of Bowness in Calgary, Alberta.